In this video, we're going to be breaking down 5 MLB games happening on August 18, 2026, and providing you with a side pick and a total pick for every matchup. As usual, visit our channel for the rest of today's game picks and stick around until the end because you won't want to miss out on anything. New York Yankees versus Baltimore Orioles. Something's been off about this Baltimore team all summer, and it runs a lot deeper than just where they're sitting in the standings. When a franchise starts unloading names that were supposed to be foundational pieces, it tells you pretty clearly where the front office thinks the ship is sailing. The catcher who was essentially the face of their rebuild is now catching for a division rival up in Boston. The veteran right-hander who 8 innings for them is off in Minnesota now. The outfielder they traded for over the winter is patrolling grass on the West Coast. That's the mood hanging over Camden Yards on this Tuesday, a clubhouse that's been told, without a single word being said out loud, that this isn't their year. Meanwhile, the club rolling into town from up I-95 has had Baltimore's number for pretty much the entire calendar year. Every time these two have gotten together in 2026, the visitors have walked out with the win far more often than not. That isn't a random hot streak or a small sample quirk, it's a season-long trend, and those tend to keep going when the underlying reasons don't shift. Here's the thing about the arm getting the ball for the roadside tonight. This isn't some reclamation project trotting out for a rehab-adjacent audition. The southpaw was pitching to an earned run average in the low 3 range before the elbow started barking, and his final tune-up in the minors featured 7 strikeouts over 4 1/3 scoreless frames. Even on a limited pitch count in his first outing back, a rested, healthy arm with that kind of repertoire creates real problems for a lineup that hasn't exactly been mashing. The bullpen behind him will need to cover the middle innings, and that's a fair concern to note, but the visitors have generally trusted their relief group in spots like this all season long. The right-hander towing the rubber for the home side is a whole different story. Baltimore paid a real premium to bring him in and then locked him up long-term this spring, but the returns have been kind of a mixed bag. His win-loss line reads almost like a punishment for a pitcher whose team can't hit for him. Even accounting for the weak run support, though, this hasn't been the difference maker the front office was banking on. And when he wobbles, the home bullpen behind him has not been the kind of safety net that erases mistakes. Oddly enough, the roadside has actually been more comfortable playing away from Yankee Stadium than in it this year. The home club, meanwhile, has been merely okay at Camden, treading water right around the 500 mark on their own turf. Now, the honest pushback here is that the visiting lineup has hit a serious cold snap at the plate lately, and that's a legitimate concern, not something you can just wave off. But when you weigh the returning lefty, the trend line of this specific matchup all year, the state of a Baltimore roster that just spent the deadline shipping pieces out the door, and the road team's comfort in away environments, the visitors roll into this one with the far cleaner story. As our first pick for this matchup, the New York Yankees money line is our full game side pick. The forecast for the Harbor City has that classic late August feel to it. Warm during the afternoon, cooling off nicely once the sun starts dipping behind the warehouse in right field, and a steady breeze pushing in off the north-northwest. Camden generally plays pretty fair overall, but when the wind is doing that little rejection dance out toward center and right, some of the balls that might have snuck into the flag court end up dying on the warning track instead. That's the sort of subtle detail that can be the difference between a 3-run bomb and a routine can of corn, and over the course of 9 innings, those little swings compound in a hurry. The lineups walking into this one are worth thinking about too. The visiting bats, honestly, have been mired in one of their uglier stretches of the whole season. Since the All-Star break, this club has been scratching and clawing just to scrape together runs, sitting at the very bottom of the league in team batting average during that stretch. Nights of 1- and 2-run output have become the norm rather than the exception. On the Baltimore side of the ledger, the offense has been leaning heavily on a very short list of dependable contributors, while much of the supporting cast has cycled in and out of the injured list. Take away the 2 or 3 bats carrying the load, and the depth just isn't there to string together big innings the way a healthier version of this lineup could. The right-hander getting the ball for the home team, for all his headline-grabbing struggles, still has a real knack for missing bats. His strikeout total is well into triple digits already this year, and when he's spotting the fastball where he wants it, the swings and misses come in clusters. Innings where he's piling up punch-outs are innings where he isn't putting traffic on the bases for the middle of the order to cash in. Add in that the visiting relief group has been steady enough all year that even bullpen-heavy nights for this club don't automatically become slugfests. Now, could this one still turn into a shootout? Sure, it could. Baseball has this funny habit of laughing at tidy pitching setups the second you get comfortable with them. One grooved fastball to the wrong hitter with a couple of ducks on the pond, and the whole complexion of a game can flip inside a single inning. Camden has definitely seen its share of 10-plus scoring nights over the years, especially in July and August when the humidity thickens and the wind lays down. That's a real risk, and it deserves saying out loud. But when you line up the mild evening conditions, the wind pattern that isn't doing hitters any favors, both lineups either being battered up or just missing key pieces they've leaned on all year, and a home starter with legitimate bat-missing stuff getting the ball, the shape of this evening tilts toward staying quieter than the number the sportsbooks are laying out. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Quick commercial break. You know the deal. If you want to get our exclusive best sport picks to take things to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Go check it out. Commercial break over. Now back to the game. San Francisco Giants versus Cleveland Guardians. The story tonight really starts on the mound, because honestly, this is about as lopsided a starting pitching matchup as you'll find anywhere on the whole slate. Cleveland is trotting out a left-hander who spent this summer becoming a first-time All-Star, chewing up National League lineups with a 7-pitch mix that looked, for stretches, like something you'd expect out of a video game more than a real Major League arm. The Guardians front office watched all of that from a distance, decided they wanted that specific arm in their rotation for the stretch run, and paid up at the trade deadline to bring him aboard. Now are the first couple of Cleveland outings the storybook debut everyone was hoping for. No, not really. He's still settling in with new catchers, a fresh pitching plan, and honestly, a whole new zip code. Here's the thing though, a full season body of work stretching well past 20 starts of genuinely front-of-the-rotation production doesn't just evaporate because of a 2-outing acclimation stretch in August. On the other side of this thing, San Francisco is countering with a rookie southpaw who's still trying to plant his flag at the highest level. His minor league changeup earned rave reviews for years, no argument there, but the surface stats through his current big league run have been pretty rough, and his track record against American League opponents specifically is razor-thin and not exactly flattering. Zoom out to the standings and things only get worse for the visitors. San Francisco is sitting at 51-73, basically operating with a wait-till-next-year energy after watching a handful of key veterans either get shipped out at the deadline or shut down for the season. Cleveland is at 60-65, still very much alive in a wildly compressed division race where every home game legitimately feels like it carries a little extra weight. Motivation, familiarity with the ballpark, and that sizable rotational edge all lean the same direction here. To be fair, the Giants have shown a few flickers of life lately, with a couple of youngsters called up from AAA swinging some hot lumber, and I'm not going to sit here pretending they can't steal a random game. Baseball rarely reads the script, but when you stack the arms, the standings, the storylines, and the setting all in one column, the tilt on this thing is pretty obvious to anyone paying attention. As our first pick for this matchup, the Cleveland Guardians money line is our full game side pick. Now flip the coin over and think about how the runs are likely to actually stack up on the scoreboard tonight, because there's a real case brewing that this one plays higher than it looks on paper. Start with the San Francisco starter, because underneath the shiny reputation of a signature off-speed pitch is a contact profile that should have opposing hitters licking their chops. We're talking about a young left-hander who's surrendering hard contact at a rate that ranks near the ugly end of the league, with average exit velocities pushing right up near the 90-mile-per-hour mark and a hard hit percentage hovering close to half of everything put in play. That's the kind of profile where innings can unravel in a hurry, especially when a couple of those hot shot balls happen to find gaps or the outfield wall in the same frame. Weather-wise, we're looking at a warm, muggy Cleveland evening, and that lakeside ballpark tends to play noticeably friendlier to hitters when the humidity climbs and the wind isn't howling straight off the water. There's a non-zero chance of an evening thunderstorm sliding through the region too, and rain-shortened or delay-marred games have a funny way of exposing bullpens, which almost always nudges totals north instead of south. Speaking of bullpens, Cleveland's middle inning group has been quietly leaking oil in the weeks since the deadline, with the lineup reportedly bailing them out just about as often as they've been stranded by it. San Francisco's relief corps isn't exactly a lockdown unit either, and if this game turns into a bullpen slugfest by the 6th or 7th, the ceiling on the scoreboard gets very interesting very quickly. The Giants' offense has quietly shown it can put up crooked numbers when the right conditions line up, hanging 7 on Colorado in a recent series and getting some genuine spark plays from those young outfielders I mentioned a minute ago. Now, I'll cop to the counter-argument here, because Progressive Field can absolutely play as a slight pitcher's park in cooler stretches, and both lineups have gone through icy patches this year where the runs just refuse to come. Even so, with a wobbly visiting starter, a home bullpen carrying recent trust issues, warm and heavy summer air, and the storm delay wild card lurking, the runs feel like they genuinely want to show up here. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Detroit Tigers versus Pittsburgh Pirates. Detroit rolled into Pittsburgh punching above their weight after a rough stretch back home, and the way they answered on Monday night was the kind of statement you don't just fold up and throw away 24 hours later. This is a club that has quietly been one of the better teams in the American League since the All-Star break, sitting at 16-12 over that stretch, and even after that ugly sweep by Chicago, they still walked into PNC Park and dictated the whole rhythm of the opener. Momentum in a short series is a real thing, especially when the visiting bullpen just got a taste of finishing off a game in an unfamiliar building and the traveling lineup got its confidence licking early. The arm Detroit is handing the ball to tonight has been the definition of a quiet professional, the kind of righty who doesn't blow you away but keeps his team within a run or two almost every time out. His under-the-hood numbers have actually been sharper than his win-loss line hints, and he's built his game around throwing strikes, mixing speeds, and letting the defense behind him handle the rest. Pittsburgh is not a pushover at home, and their home record is actually a touch above break-even, so this isn't a slam-dunk situation on paper. But the Pirates as a team have limped to an 11-18 record since the break, and their own front office has been openly walking down expectations about the injured slugger, who just came off a long injured list stay, warning that a hand fracture doesn't magically flip a lineup in his first week back. The intangible piece that keeps getting overlooked here is urgency. Detroit is fighting for their actual playoff lives, sitting on the very edge of a wild card spot with every single game carrying weight, while Pittsburgh has quietly slid outside of realistic contention. When two evenly matched clubs meet in mid-August, the team that plays every pitch like their season depends on it usually wins that pitch. Stack the momentum, the steady rotation piece, and the desperation gap on top of that plus money tag, and this roadside feels like a lot more than a coin flip. As our first pick for this matchup, the Detroit Tigers money line is our full game side pick. Last night's opener between these two put 13 combined runs on the board, and while one game is one game, the ingredients that cook that number are still sitting on the counter tonight. Warm summer air along the Allegheny, a barely there rain chance, and two lineups that just spent 9 innings watching pitchers get pushed around by contact and traffic. PNC Park has that reputation as a place that eats offense, and that's fair over a full season, but a mild August evening where the ball carries a little further than it would in April is a different animal entirely. Yet the Pittsburgh Bats have been one of the more underrated groups in the National League this year when it comes to just putting balls in play, ranking near the top of the sport in team batting average and near the top in runs scored too. That style of offense matches up in a very specific way against a right-hander who works the zone and invites contact rather than blowing hitters away with strikeout stuff. When a contact-leaning arm meets a contact-leaning lineup, balls find grass, innings drag on, and the scoreboard operator gets busy. On the other side of the pitching card, the young Pirates starter is fresh off a 9-inning masterpiece that almost defied logic, tossed on a shockingly low pitch count, and that kind of outing sits at the ceiling of the ceiling. Starters rarely stack anything close to that in their very next turn, especially when the season workload has already blown past anything that arm had ever taken on at the professional level before this year. The Detroit offense, for its part, has had a scorching August as a group, hanging double-digit crooked numbers on the Mariners a couple weeks back and posting 8 runs of its own in this same building just last night. It's fair to acknowledge the flip side. Both bullpens have had cleaner nights, and PNC in a vacuum does skew toward pitching, so the case for a quieter total isn't crazy. But the warm evening, the season workload piling up on the young starter, the contact profile of the other guy, and the actual proof of concept from 24 hours ago all point in the same direction. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Toronto Blue Jays versus Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays came home from that West Coast trip looking like a team playing on a different plane. 9 straight wins, contributions from every corner of the roster, and a record now sitting at 75-49, best in the sport. Baltimore did finally break the streak Friday night, but Tampa Bay is 42-21 inside the walls of Tropicana Field this year, so pushing them off that home comfort is a chore even for good ball clubs. The Blue Jays, meanwhile, roll in at 61-65 overall and 28-32 in road games. Here's where things get a little heavier for Toronto. Their entire summer has been about scraping runs together, and now they're trying to do it without Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who landed on the 7-day concussion list this past Saturday after taking a knee to the head in that wild Yankees series. Pull the middle of that order out, and the lineup thins in a hurry, especially against Nick Martinez, a righty who stacked up 12 wins, an earned run average parked in the mid-2s, and the kind of quiet, paint-the-corners approach that turns free swingers into meat groundouts. He's also a big reason the season series between these two clubs already sits at 8-2 in Tampa Bay's favor, which is not exactly a subtle track record. Let credit where it's due, though the Blue Jays have been playing much better baseball since late July, going 14-8 in that stretch and clawing back into a wild card conversation almost nobody had them in a month ago. They've got fight, they've had timely hits from the bottom of the order, and their bullpen has kept them upright in a bunch of one-run games. But the Rays are 46-10 this season when they push across 5 or more runs, and the ask of a depleted Toronto offense hanging crooked numbers on Martinez in that building against the hottest team in the American League this month is a very tall order. As our first pick for this matchup, the Tampa Bay Rays money line is our full game side pick. Tropicana Field is a dome, which means the wind is dead, the humidity is dead, and every summer rain cloud rolling off the Gulf may as well not exist tonight. The ballpark itself has always played pitcher-friendly, and the fresh turf and rebuilt roof they installed for this year's reopening didn't magically turn it into a launching pad. Tampa Bay's staff has been the stingiest in the sport all year, sitting first in team earned run average and first in team whip across the majors, and that kind of pitching depth doesn't just help the starter, it stretches across every single inning of the ball game. Toronto walks into that environment with an offense ranked 29th in runs scored and 29th in home runs. They've plated 4 runs or fewer in 7 of their 14 August contests, and they're missing more than just their franchise face. Anthony Santander and Addison Barger have been parked on the injured list for a while now, which trims the depth right when they need extra bats to step up. On the other side of it, the Rays don't exactly bulldoze teams with sheer volume either. Sure, their offense sits in the top third of the league in runs scored, so a bigger night is always possible. But Jose Soriano's sinker-heavy repertoire and grounder-happy profile actually plays pretty well on Tropicana's carpeted infield, where hard-hit worm burners get gobbled up in a hurry. Toss in Tampa Bay's high-leverage bullpen, anchored by Brian Baker and his sub-2 earned run average and 34 saves already this season, and you've got a recipe where the late innings clamp shut instead of blowing wide open. Both lineups have real reasons to look pedestrian tonight, and runs, one way or the other, should be a whole lot tougher to come by than the casual bettor is willing to admit. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. St. Louis Cardinals versus Cincinnati Reds. Something's been simmering with the visiting rotation that hasn't quite gotten the airtime it deserves, and it's the quiet engine driving why the roadside deserves a serious look tonight. The right-hander getting the ball for St. Louis walked into 2026 needing to prove he could even hold a rotation spot, having spent the previous couple of seasons living almost exclusively out of the bullpen. Honestly, the transition was supposed to be bumpy. Instead, he's been carving. He's rattled off a stretch of 8 straight starts giving up 2 runs or fewer, and if you pull the camera back just a touch, his earned run average across roughly 7 turns through the rotation has been hanging in the low ones, which is genuinely absurd for a guy who was reinventing himself on the fly. That's not a one-off gem or a lucky week. That's more than a month of quiet, methodical strangling of opposing lineups. Layer on top of that a Cardinals team that has taken 10 of its last 14, and what you're really looking at is a club walking into Game 3 of the series with belief bubbling under the surface. Even Monday's day-night doubleheader, the kind of grinder that usually gasses a roster and leaves it looking for the exit door, ended in a split that keeps the momentum breathing. Here's the thing about Game 3 specifically. This club has gone 6-0 in its most recent trips through that exact spot in a series, which tells you they know how to close things out mentally. And across the diamond, Cincinnati is trying to duct tape a rotation back together after losing its opening day ace to a nagging elbow issue, a former all-star lefty to a shoulder problem, and another key arm to a forearm concern, all of it leaning way too hard on a bullpen that's been carrying extra freight for weeks. Even the home lefty they're running out tonight has been in an uncomfortable spot in his own building, with the Reds sitting 1-4 in his last 5 home starts, so the venue itself isn't cushioning things the way you'd expect. Now, the counter is fair and worth naming. This ballpark is a launching pad. The road split for the visiting starter isn't quite as spotless as his home one, and Cincinnati has one of the more electric leadoff bats in the sport who can flip a game with a single swing regardless of who's on the mound. Those things are real, but the pitching edge, the injury drag on the home rotation depth, the fresh confidence of a visiting club that just banked a doubleheader win, and the psychological cushion of a proven Game 3 tendency all keep pointing the same direction. As our first pick for this matchup, the St. Louis Cardinals money line is our full game side pick. Now for the run environment, because this one has a very different personality than the ballpark's reputation might trick you into expecting. Great American lives in the public imagination as a bandbox where every lazy fly ball turns into a highlight. And yes, the fences aren't doing pitchers any favors, but the actual box scores between these two clubs this year have been telling a completely different story. The last 4 meetings between them have all landed under, which is the kind of pattern that doesn't happen by accident when two divisional neighbors see each other this often. Pull the lens back further and it gets even louder because the visitors have gone under in 6 straight road games against sub.500 opponents, and 8 of their last 10 Tuesday outings have also come in below the number. There's real substance behind those trends, too. The home club is currently sitting dead last in Major League Baseball and team batting average, an anemic mark right around the .227 range, and they're still missing a key middle-of-the-order run producer whose wrist injury has kept him shelved since late July. The lefty getting the ball for Cincinnati has been remarkably efficient lately in his own right, keeping opponents to 3 earned runs or fewer in 17 of his last 19 outings. And the split gets even sharper on Tuesday specifically, where the under has cashed at a clip of 11 to 2-1 across his last 14 turns on that day of the week. That's a pattern with a real pulse. On the other side of the equation, the visiting bullpen leans on a closer who currently sits atop the entire National League in saves for the season, so late inning cushion isn't easy to crack open either. Now, you've got to nod at the counter here. This park absolutely plays generous to power. The home team ranks inside the top 10 in home runs across the majors, and one big swing from an in-form bat can wreck any low-scoring narrative on any given night in this building. That's a legitimate risk, but the sheer volume of trend, the shape of both lineups right now, a neutral weather forecast with no wind boost helping the ball travel, and the recent form of the arm on the mound for the home side all keep whispering the same conclusion. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.